I've used a lot of meal services, but Hungry Root truly stands out because it's built around the way real families live and eat. They don't just send meal kits. They personalize your grocery cart and meal plan based on your preferences and dietary goals. All I had to do was take a short quiz, and right away, their smart cart technology started building a cart that fit how we eat. Now, each week feels easier, like someone else is doing the thinking for me. I've been focused on cleaner eating lately, and I love that Hungry Root keeps out over 200 additives, including things like high fructose corn syrup and artificial sweeteners. Their meats are hormone and antibiotic free, and the produce options include organic and non GMO picks. They also stock brands I already trust, like Oatly, Vital Farms, and Harmless Harvest. One of our favorite meals has been the teriyaki salmon with green beans, light, flavorful, and done in 12 minutes flat. Plus, I've noticed we waste less food, spend less time shopping, and even save money by skipping those impulse grocery buys. Take advantage of this exclusive offer. For a limited time, get 40% off your first box, plus get a free item in every box for life. Go to hungryroot.com/Dr. Meg and use code Dr. Meg. That's hungryroot.com/Dr. Meg, code Dr. Meg, to get 40% off your first box and a free item of your choice for life. hungryroot.com/Dr. Meg, code Dr. Meg.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Parenting Great Kids podcast. As a pediatrician, I've listened to countless parents express a common sentiment, and that is, what happened to my sweet child? The challenges of raising a teenager can be bewildering, especially when it seems to appear overnight. The child you once knew transforms into a complex and sometimes unrecognizable individual. Well, during the early adolescent years, kids are intensely focused on establishing an independent identity outside the family. And while there are many reasons why teens act the way they do, the key to success lies in teaching them skills in emotional intelligence. Well, our guest today is the remarkable Dr. Melanie McNally, a leading voice in clinical psychology and teen mental health. Her recent release, The Emotionally Intelligent Teen, Skills to Help You Deal with What You Feel, Build Stronger Relationships, and Boost Self-Confidence, is a beacon for parents, offering valuable tools with resilience and empathy to navigate the emotional landscape.
Self-regulation is not about hiding your feelings. It's not about burying things deep inside and acting like they don't exist. We know that when it be healthy, it's going to come out somewhere. It'll come out, you're a pediatrician, it's going to come out in some sort of physical way, or they're going to blow up over little tiny things instead.
Welcome to Parenting Great Kids. Here's your host, Dr. Meg Meeker.
Welcome, Dr. Melanie McNally. I'm excited to talk to you about this book and your work.
Thank you so much for having me, and I'm excited to speak with you as well. So thank you.
What is an emotionally intelligent teen?
So emotional intelligence basically has three components. It has self-awareness, self-regulation, and interpersonal skills. Those are the three main pieces that make up emotional intelligence. So a teen who has high emotional intelligence, they're going to be aware of their feelings and their thoughts. They are going to be able to regulate themselves. So when they're dealing with really intense, hard emotions or adversities that they're facing, they're going to know how to calm themselves down to a certain extent. No teen is going to be perfect at this, but to a certain extent, they can regulate. And they're going to have decent interpersonal skills. They're going to know how to read social cues. They're going to know how to understand what other people might be thinking and feeling around them. They're going to understand what other people's perception is of them. And so a teen with high emotional intelligence will have those skills across those three areas.
It's very interesting because you don't think of teenagers as having those, you know, understanding sort of who they are and being able to focus on others. Well, can you elaborate on how prioritizing emotional intelligence in adolescence contributes to building a future generation of resilient adults? Because I think all parents want their kids to become resilient as they grow up.
Yes, absolutely. So that's a great question. And one thing that's really interesting is I think it was the World Economic Forum. They just released a big report of all of the skills that that employers are looking for in the workforce over the next decade. And emotional intelligence was actually rated in the top 5 of those skills. It was even above technical skills. So it is something that people really want they want individuals entering the workforce to have that emotional intelligence in place. And you mentioned resilience, and there is so much research that shows when an individual has self-regulation skills in place, when they are able to deal with those really intense feelings, or they're able to manage or to de-escalate themselves, they are much better equipped to handle any adversities that they face. So they're much better equipped to handle, the loss of a pet, or, parents getting a divorce, or not getting into their dream college, or, a breakup with their love. Like, they are going to have those skills in place, and they're going to be able to handle those adversities much better because they're so much more resilient because of the emotional intelligence that they've developed. So it is important on that psychological level. But then when you even think about them entering the workforce, it's important on that level as well.
Let's walk that through. You're a 15-year-old emotionally intelligent teenager. Your parents just got divorced and you feel despondent and sad. You don't know what your future is going to look like. So this 15-year-old teenager feels intense anger, sadness, anxiety, whatever. What does he do with those feelings? Because when you talk about self-regulation, are you talking about kids shutting their feelings away or processing them in a certain manner? How would you coach a 15-year-old in that situation through in order to help them build more emotional intelligence?
Yes. So first of all, self-regulation is not about hiding your feelings. It's not about burying things deep inside and acting like they don't exist. That, we know that wouldn't be healthy. It's going to come out somewhere. It'll come out, you're a pediatrician. It's going to come out in some sort of like physical way, or they're going to blow up over little tiny things instead. So for a teen who's dealing with a really difficult situation like that and is really struggling, when they have emotional intelligence skills in place, they are able to, first of all, recognize what they're feeling. So they're able to label those emotions. Like, they're able to label their anger and maybe their disappointment and their sadness and their depression and the confusion and maybe the uncertainty and the anxiety that they feel. And they're going to be able to recognize how those emotions feel in their body. So they might recognize that, I'm so anxious right now and I'm having trouble sleeping because I'm so worried about my future. So they can make those kinds of connections to a certain extent. And then they're able to do something about it to decrease the intensity of those feelings. So they might decide that, I need to start journaling to deal with all of these intense feelings, or my anger is so strong, I'm going to really take it out on the soccer field and I'm going to get in some extra practices or some workout sessions because I know that's going to help me work through some of this anger. They're going to maybe talk to somebody about all of the different things that they're experiencing and feeling. they're going to choose some type of tool to help them regulate and to decrease the intensity of those feelings. And so when I'm working with a teen client and I'm helping them build emotional intelligence, that's a lot of what we're doing is figuring out what it is they're actually feeling, helping them label their emotions. And for some teens, that might mean looking at a feeling wheel to build their emotional vocabulary so that they're not relying on basic feeling words like sad or mad. We want to get a little bit more in depth with the types of vocabulary they're using around their emotions and helping them pinpoint. Maybe it's 3 emotions that they're feeling at the same time and helping them label them and then deciding on what's a coping tool that's going to help decrease this intense feeling right now. Whether that's like I mentioned, the journaling, or it could be exercise. It could be, I'm going to start going for walks every morning because I am feeling so anxious and tense, and going for a walk and, looking up at the sky or looking at all the buildings or the homes as I pass by, that's going to help to calm me down and ground me a bit.
Do those emotionally intelligent teens need to know the root of the anger or sadness, or can they just identify the anger and move on from there?
That is such a good question. And I get that question a lot because people oftentimes do think I have to get at the root cause. And that's not always the case. If you can, that can be really helpful. But sometimes that root reason might be so deep that it's going to take a long time to figure out. We want to be able to regulate even without knowing the root cause. We want to still be able to take action and move forward in life, even if we don't know. So just being able to label the feeling can be enough. And as, the teen is becoming more self-aware and they're learning and growing and evolving, they might still work on getting to the root cause of some of this intense anger along the way, but they can absolutely still learn self-regulation as they're going about it.
Let's talk about relationships that teens have with parents and peers. Of course, we have the social media and the intricacies of peer dynamics, and these are challenges that you emphasize in your book. How can teenagers navigate the digital landscape and maintain emotional well-being and healthy relationships? Or can they?
Yeah, I think it is possible, but I do think it is very challenging because, like you mentioned at the start of this, teens are at a developmental level where it's different than adults. When you and I go on social media, we are able to see things in a different way than a teen brain sees them. We are able to understand that this is a highlight reel and that people are deciding, they are curating what they are sharing. They're not necessarily putting the picture of themselves with the double chin on, online. They are deciding what image looks best in. And we can make that distinction, whereas a teen brain can't always make that distinction. So when they see that picture and they instantly go into comparison mode of, that person looks better than me, or they have more friends, or they're more popular, or they're doing so much more with their life. And so teens do have this extra layer that makes it a little bit more challenging because they do feel like they're at the center of the world. That's just part of, teen development, feeling like you are the center of everything and everybody is looking at you and judging you. But they have to learn how to navigate it with social media because it is just the reality of their lives now. So helping them understand that this is a highlight reel, these are curated images, reminding them of that. One of my favorite things to do with teens is a social media cleanse, where I have them do a check-in before they get on social media on how they're feeling. And then they just scroll and do whatever they're going to do. And then I have them check in periodically while they're scrolling and afterwards with how they're feeling. So they actually have the data to show how much it's impacting their emotional well-being. And then they can start to decide, okay, maybe there's certain accounts I need to unfollow or mute.
I love that. Is there a theme, or are you seeing repetitive patterns in teens where they go on feeling a certain way, and by the time they're done, they feel a certain way? What are you seeing where kids feel a certain way at the beginning and then feel a certain way at the end? Is there a pattern you're seeing?
Yeah, absolutely. So I will see typically with teen girls, I will see them where they might feel pretty decent about things and feel, maybe neutral or calm before they get on. And then once they've been scrolling on Instagram or TikTok, they will feel really bad about their bodies. Their self-confidence is much lower. They tend to feel more anxious. With boys, I'll see them where again, at the beginning, they'll go on feeling maybe a little bored. Maybe that's kind of what prompted them to get on and start scrolling to begin with. But then once they've spent time on there, their motivation dips down quite a bit. So that they now feel just more like apathetic, just low energy, not really wanting to do much. So those are like the two big patterns that come out in our social media cleanse work.
It makes so much sense. I mean, it makes so much sense. And I think everybody listening can identify with that, because a lot of us are on Instagram or TikTok, just sort of scrolling through and scrolling through. And after a while, you end up feeling kind of, ugh. And it's addictive. It's hard to stop. I have to take a quick break, but before I go, I want to invite you to visit drmegmeeker.com, where you can find a plethora of resources for your parenting journey. Explore our courses, join our free coaching webinar, and take our parent personality quiz. We'll be right back. You know that moment when your child lights up because something finally clicks? That's what every parent wants, to see their child thrive. But when school just isn't the right fit, that joy can fade. That's why I want to tell you about K-12 powered schools. These are tuition-free, accredited online public schools for kindergarten through 12th grade. They're designed to meet your child where they are, so they can learn at their own pace, in their own space, and a curriculum that fits their unique learning style. And here's what sets it apart. This isn't homeschooling. You're not the teacher. K-12's state-certified online educators are trained to make lessons interactive and engaging using innovative technology. And your child still gets social experiences, clubs, extracurriculars, even in-person events. K-12 has helped over 3 million families give their kids the tools to thrive, and they've been doing it for more than 25 years. It could be exactly what your child needs. Visit k12.com/Dr. Meg to find a tuition-free K-12 powered school near you and enroll today. That's k12./DRMEG, all caps. Some days, parenting feels like chasing moments that never quite land. You ask a question, they shrug. You try again, they look at their screen. And you wonder, why is this so hard? That's why I love FamGabs. It's a 70-card deck created by a child therapist who spent 16 years working directly with families, helping parents and kids break through the awkward one-word answers and really connect. The questions are open-ended, thoughtfully chosen, and designed to get your child talking and keep the conversation going. There are even bonus cards just for parents to help you build your confidence in your connection toolbox. If you've ever wished for a better way to understand your child or just to have more meaningful conversations as a family, FamGabs is such a gift. Search FamGabs on Amazon and use promo code DrMegPod during checkout to get 10% off your order. That's FamGabs on Amazon. Use promo code DrMegPod and get 10% off your order. Let's talk about the post-pandemic loneliness that teens are struggling with. Can you recommend to parents some actionable strategies that they can implement to help their kids form meaningful connections that maybe were lost or broken during the pandemic when they couldn't relate to kids?
I think one of the biggest things is a community effort. Because one thing that I hear a lot is that teens today, they're texting and they prefer to text each other rather than hang out in person. And then when parents try and say like, okay, you need to have a friend over, and then the friend comes over, but then they're both just on their phones the whole time. And I will hear parents complain that I can't set these rules at my house because then no one wants to come over to our house if I say no phones when you come and hang out over here. So what I suggest is that parents kind of within a friend group try and connect and talk to each other about having just a communal rule where when they're hanging out in person, there's not going to be any devices. And so then that way it's equal across households and the friends, kind of know what to expect when they go and hang out with each other, because that really does make a difference. We want them getting that in-person connection. And then for the kids who don't necessarily have that solid of a friend group, or maybe, the parents don't have that kind of relationship, you can still set those rules at your house and explain to your teen why you want that in-person connection at home. And even if they go over to a friend's house, that you expect that they're going to not have their phone out, that they're going to turn it off. And again, explain why, because teens really like to know the reason why behind things. That does make a big difference, rather than it's just my rule, I said so. So if you can explain that and help them understand, most of the teens I work with will tell me they hate their phones. They completely feel addicted to their phones. They hate how much time they're spending on them. They want rules and structure around their phone use. They just can't implement that kind of structure themselves. They need help. And so if parents can step in and provide that structure and those rules, it's really, even if your teen complains, it is really what most of them want for themselves. They really, truly do.
I have found the exact same thing. I have teens tell me, girls, about social media. I feel so much better when I don't go on, but I just end up going on and I don't know why. And I just can't get myself to stop. And most of them can feel that it's not very good and they don't like it, but they have a hard time just kind of stopping. They want someone to help them regulate it. Now, I want to turn the corner. You have a unique brain coaching program where you combine clinical psychology and counseling and hands-on work with teens and young adults. What is this approach and how does it differ from traditional methods of counseling?
So I used to do therapy. That used to be my business 100%. I had a, brick and mortar private practice in the suburbs of Chicago for quite a while. And I was doing therapy, and even during the pandemic when everything was online, again, it was all therapy based. And I started getting a little frustrated with a couple of things around it. One is the fact that you can't have parents as involved as you want unless the teen is 100%, like they have to sign off on it, they have to give consent. And even then, there's a lot of limits. And I really wanted parental involvement because teens obviously don't exist in a vacuum. I really wanted parents to know what we're working on and how they could support them. So I was starting to get frustrated on that end. And then I also wanted more in between session support. I wanted to be able to provide teens with more, some texting and voice notes and, getting on calls in between sessions if necessary. So I started thinking about how that would work with coaching and how I would want to approach it, and decided that this was a really good fit where I can, I make sure at the beginning the teen knows that parents are going to get progress note after every session. explaining like what we worked on and how they can support you. Parents get their own support sessions, as many as they want, so that they're really involved and they know what we're working on. And then on the teen side of things, it's very structured and goal-oriented. So we're deciding like, this is what we're working on. If we're working on building self-confidence, let's break that down specifically what we're doing and how we're going to go about it. So they know the game plan, they know the roadmap. And then I can give them as much in between session support as they want. So we can text each other. I had a young adult the other day who was going out for his first job interview and was really anxious in the car right before heading in. So we were able to get on FaceTime and I was able to help him regulate so that he could go into the job interview feeling less anxious. So I can do that kind of in between session support. And I just found that in those two major differences, it's been just leaps and bounds as far as the amount of transformation and the way that we're able to reach the goals that they're setting for themselves, and we're able to make progress so much more quickly.
Let me see if I understand. When you do this coaching with a teenager and their parents, do the parents always know the weekly plan and what you're talking to the teen about, or are they just there sort of in the background? And how much involvement do you give a parent, and how much advice do you give the parent? Say the teenager's working on self-esteem and you give the teenager a plan and you're involved. What do you tell the parents to do, and how much do you let them know what's going on?
Yes. So what I do is the teen knows that the parent is going to get an email after every session. So I generally meet with clients once a week. And so the parent will get that weekly email. And sometimes I'll even read this is what I'm going to include this week. And so the teen, if there's certain things that they don't want their parent to know, they know it's not going to go into the email. But it'll say, we're working on building their self-confidence. And this is what we did this week. We identified when they feel the lowest, we identified what happens in their body when they're feeling really bad about themselves. And we worked on changing self-talk. And so these are the things that they're going to practice saying to themselves when they're feeling really bad. And then I'll tell the parent, this is how you can support them. And it might be, give them a reminder before they head out the door of their self-talk statements. Or it might be something like, your teen is going to go outside their comfort zone this week. So check in with them and see how it went. I'll give them some specific guidance, but then I leave some wiggle room so that they can still navigate it on their own. I'm not necessarily giving the parent a verbatim script or anything like that, but it's this is what we're doing, and this is how you can kind of check in or give reminders or have a conversation around it.
Which parent, assume they have a mother and a father who are involved, whether they're divorced or married and live with the kids, which parent in general more easily engages the teenager than the other? And does it matter to the teenager which parent engages more?
Does matter to the teen, because they'll typically tell me, if they don't want a particular parent included on the email, or if there's, an issue with the parent, or maybe we're even working on improving communication between a specific parent. So they'll give me a heads up if they're struggling with one more than the other. But it is usually the mom who reaches out for the initial consultation to make sure that coaching's a good fit. I do include both parents on the email. And then but it is usually the mom that will email back with questions or feedback. But I do have some dads who are really involved and very active and will, email back as well. But I would say about 80% it's the mom.
Why do you think fathers aren't as engaged? Do you think it's because they feel insecure about approaching their kids, or do they feel they don't have the skills, or they just don't understand? What's the hesitation in engaging? Because that's exactly what I see in kids, say, with anorexia. And yet if I can get a dad to engage, the kids do so much better if I both parents, not just one. So what do you think it is going on with dads that's holding them back?
In some households, it's that the mom has just taken on the bulk of the child rearing and the parenting responsibilities, and they've just kind of maintained that workload imbalance. They've just maintained that over the years. And I do hear from moms often, like they do want the dads involved. They do want them to know what's going on, or they want the dad to work on changing their relationship with their teen. And they will, share, they'll try and even get the husband or the father to attend some of the parent support sessions so that so that I'm meeting with him and he's a little more involved. And some dads will absolutely do that and some dads won't. But I think, it's that bulk, the imbalance part. And then maybe what you touched on is that maybe there's kind of an insecurity around it where they don't feel great in their parenting skills and they don't know what to do. And maybe they don't like not knowing and they don't like admitting that they don't know what to do. That could very much be a factor, and that it's just easier to avoid than to deal with it.
You often talk about in the book that thin line between kids being lazy and burned out. Now, those are opposite ends of the spectrum. So how do you identify if your child is just being lazy and unmotivated and I don't want to do this, and burned out?
Oh, we're going to have to talk when my next book comes out in September, because my next book is Raising a Motivated Teen, and it's all about motivation and helping parents navigate a teen who appears unmotivated. So I think that when it comes to making that distinction between laziness and unmotivated, I think we do have to start by looking at the foundations. Like, we have to look at the foundational pieces first and foremost. So sleep, diet, exercise, and socialization. And we have to look at and see, is a teen getting enough fuel? Are they eating enough? Are they hydrated enough? Are they getting enough sleep each night? Are they moving their bodies every day? Are they engaged socially? And if the answer is no to any of those areas, we need to focus on that foundational piece first, because that's how we'll figure out, is this an energy issue, like a laziness issue, or is this more of a motivation issue? So we can get one of those foundational pieces in place. And then what I find often is that once sleep is taken care of, because most teens are not getting enough sleep, not even close. And once they start getting more sleep and better sleep, where like they don't have,
That's right.
they don't have their phones in their room. And so they're actually like falling asleep easily. They're not looking at their phone in the middle of the night. Then we'll start to see that they have more motivation during the day. They have more energy. They're able to do things, they want to go off and do things. And then it just kind of erases that issue. It's no longer a problem.
Boy, don't we feel that way? I'm a different person if I don't get much sleep. That's what my husband tells me. Anyway, you have a personal story, and that really lends some authenticity to what you're talking about. Would you be willing to talk about your struggle with anxiety and how that has shaped your perspective and methodologies with your teenagers?
Yeah, absolutely. So just a quick background. So I grew up in a pretty dysfunctional home where my parents were emotionally and physically abusive with each other and with the kids. And it was not a pleasant environment whatsoever. It was very, very stressful. And I was the youngest of four and felt like it was my duty to protect my mom from my dad. She was much smaller than him, and I felt like I needed to be there to intervene, when he would hit her because she needed somebody to push him off.
Physically and emotionally then. You needed to step in, literally.
Yes, 100%. I needed to help pull him off of her or maybe even get in between them. So it was very stressful. But then on top of that, I'm, a little more hardwired towards anxiety. It runs in my family. It's on my mom's side. So I was just very anxious in general. And I really struggled. And I was, constantly dealing with stomach aches and stomach issues. I felt like just this ball of like tight stress and anxiety all the time. And we were taught in our home, you don't ever tell anybody what's going on inside of you. You don't ever tell anyone what's going on inside of our home, because my parents were, very private. Like they didn't want anybody knowing how bad it was in our house. So I felt like I had to hold everything inside. I didn't share even with my friends what was going on at home. And so I was just really stressed constantly. And it wasn't until later when I left home and I was on my own and I went to therapy myself and I started to learn how to manage the anxiety and learn how to regulate myself. I started to feel better once I took some space from my family and specifically from my mom. I was able to step into the person that I wanted to be.
Can I stop you there? So you went from years and years and years of protecting your mother, and then you said now you have to step away from your mother. Was that hard? Did you know that, or did somebody have to teach you that's what needed to happen?
So I did figure it out on my own. So my father died from cancer when I was 16. And once that eliminated that physical threat in the house, and then it was just my mom left. And at that point, it was just my mom and me because my other sisters were all gone and out of the house. I started to realize how it wasn't like my mom was a huge part of the problem. She was very emotionally abusive, really just very unkind. I mean, said incredibly
To you?
not so much to me. She was very cruel to my sisters. But there was a lot of emotional manipulation. And so I was pulled into a lot of things. It was just a very unhealthy relationship, a really unhealthy dynamic. So I felt like I needed to get away from that relationship. And I knew there was no longer that physical threat anymore. So I decided I'm gonna step away. But I wasn't super confident in myself. I moved to San Francisco because I felt like creating that physical distance between myself and her. That's what I needed. It helped to not have, there wasn't easy access to one another anymore. And so then that gave me space to kind of breathe and figure out who I was and who I wanted to be. And I still went on to have another probably 10 years of difficulties, like figuring out my relationship with my mom and how to navigate that until I eventually cut all ties with her completely. Because it just I realized that was really the best thing. But all of that just really helped guide me that if I would have had support when I was a teen, or that level of support, how invaluable that would have been for me and how helpful it would have been to get me on a different path earlier on. And so I decided, I want to be that resource for teens. I want to be that person that they can share anything with and that they can, get the support and guidance that they need in a very non-judgmental way where I'm never going to criticize them or judge them or anything, and help them figure out what they want for themselves and not what somebody is telling them they should be doing or what they need to be doing.
Our listeners can see why the book is such a treasure trove of help and teaching of skills and understanding teens. My guest has been Dr. Melanie McNally, and her book is The Emotionally Intelligent Teen: Skills to Help You Deal with What You Feel, Build Stronger Relationships, and boost self-confidence. We parents need to read that and apply it to ourselves. And then we need to teach it to our teens. And I just want to say, Melanie, I'm so sorry for what you went through. I'm just so sorry. I'm grateful of what has come out of it and the beauty that's come out of it and your strengths. But I'm just so grateful you came on the show today, and I would love to have you back again.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. And it's been so wonderful to speak with you. And I would 100% love to come back. Thank you.
Today, we dove into a crucial topic, emotional intelligence in teens. We talked about the big three: self-awareness, self-regulation, and those all-important interpersonal skills. Basically, it's about helping your teen become more resilient and ready for whatever life throws at them. As a pediatrician, here's my honest advice. Nurturing emotional intelligence in your teen isn't a walk in the park. It's downright tough. But you can start by encouraging them to explore their own emotions, helping them navigate the turbulent waters of adolescence with a better understanding of themselves. Then dive into empathy. It's not just a fancy word, it's a skill your teen needs to grasp. Talk openly about empathy and show them what it truly means to walk in someone else's shoes. Communication is key too. Yeah, it might feel like pulling teeth, but push through. Teach your teen to express themselves without bottling things up or exploding. Lead by example because they're watching how you handle your emotions. And if you're feeling overwhelmed or need some personalized guidance, don't hesitate to check out our one-on-one coaching slots available on our website, meekerparenting.com. Remember, raising emotionally intelligent teens is a journey filled with twists and turns, but keep at it. You're not just shaping their present, you're laying the groundwork for the future. And after all, great kids aren't born, they're raised with love, patience, and a whole lot of understanding.